on Tuesday, August 18th, and we're going to start out with a CEO board briefing. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present. And our first guest for this morning is Erin. You're on.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing?
Morning, Erin.
Hey, so I'm here to share some highlights and lowlights from the Fair and Expo land. Obviously, not being able to be into phase 4 anytime soon and hosting events is impacting our facility greatly. I'm hoping Gina sent out some information to you on Friday, but if not, I'm just going to cruise through and give you guys, hey, there we are. We're on the big screen now. Unfortunately, we're looking at an approximate loss of revenue of $750,000 by the end of the year, not including the fair. Currently, we have $1.396 million in reserves, and when I started at the Fair and Expo 15 years ago, we had 0 reserves. So we are thankful for that. We've been getting very creative in reducing our spending, and we've really taken it down to the basics. There's no extras. One highlight is we reduced our watering bill by $20,000 in July. And we look to do that again in August. We're a little brown right now, but we're not totally dead, but we're just doing the minimal to keep it alive. I guess the hardest part for me has been our reduction in staffing. We have 15 full-time staff members, and we've reduced that by 7 at this time. 4 are laid off, 3 are currently furloughed, and looking to furlough 3 more probably at the end of September, mid-October, as my communications with Dr. Lutz, just there's no expectations that we're going to really be having any events by the end of the year that will be near phase 4. And one bright spot is the governor's office has released in phase 2 that we can host some ag-related activities, some smaller horse shows, dogs, llamas, etc. So we do have some of those groups that will be coming on board in September, October, and November. So that will be a little bit of revenue for us. Really, we're just focusing on all the positive that we're doing, being there to support the community with the PPE storage and the distribution events. Salvation Army just had their backpack distribution event in our facility last week. I'm working with Ashley from the Supreme Court group to see if we can host some courtroom activities out at our facility in the months to come. Vicki Dalton was also out to talk about hosting in-person voting at our facility. I know she's looking at Center Place as well. So working on that virtual fair as well. We're hosting the Fair Food Drive-Through the 2 weekends in September. So we're really excited about that and hopeful that will generate us some revenue as well. And we are moving forward with working with the Christmas Bureau that always hosts 10 days of giving at the fairgrounds for the community. And we expect there'll be a bigger need this year. That will be a drive-through event. We're also talking with Tom's Turkey Drive as well to see if they want to move their event to our venue as a drive-through. And our team's keeping busy maintaining our facility, communicating with all of our events. Our events into next year are already reaching out February, March, just wondering if we have a crystal ball to say, are they going to be able to host their events? So we've got a lot going on for not being in the full swing of opening a fair on September 11th, but we're keeping steady. I did rewrite a grant that was going to be for some additional outdoor lighting through the State Department of Ag, and I rewrote that for touchless faucets. That's something we didn't have at our facility, so our team is changing out all of our faucets throughout right now, so that will be great. And moving forward, as we prepare our facility to reopen when the time comes, that we'll be safe and have some improvements in place. So I'm just kind of cruising through here kind of quick, but there is the email correspondence with Dr. Lutz. coming up there. Just again, he's not feeling optimistic about phase 4 anytime soon. We were on a call yesterday with the Washington Festivals and Events Association. Again, I mean, that's just what we're hearing, and I'm sure you're hearing it too. So if we move into the next couple of pages, we've just tried to put together our best estimate on expenses through the end of the year. And again, just really stripped it down to, water, electric, some of our basic payments on things and staffing, and forecasting that at the end of the year we would still have 789,000 plus in our reserves. We are hopeful, as part of the county's FEMA reimbursement, we did submit a couple $100,000 for all the COVID related testing and the shelter site at our facility. So that would be huge if we could get that money as well back into our pocket. And then as you go on, we've just outlined all the events that have canceled or we've canceled this far.
That's the loss of revenue right there.
And that's our dollar amount. So based on last year's invoices, so it's pretty accurate. So we're almost at the 600,000 mark at this point, just in interim events. So I know it's a lot of information to throw at you, but I'd love to answer any questions either today. Should we set up a GoFundMe for the fairgrounds? I'm not sure quite yet if we're there, but how are we going to get creative moving forward, and how long can we really sustain operating? Like I said, it's been hard, but we've been laying people off as we need to, as the work has slowed down, and forecasting will need to do some more of that.
So a couple things for you, Aaron. One, we understand everything will go back to normal on November 5th.
Oh, yay!
How long ago did you submit your request on the FEMA reimbursement? And do you know what the status is on it? And if FEMA doesn't reimburse you, that very well is an element for CARES funding from the county, so that we probably could pay for that out of the CARES revenue if we can't get it out of FEMA. So one way or the other, we can get some revenue into you. And
I like that.
So how long ago did you submit your request to FEMA?
Sure. So we submitted everything to Carrie Greitdahl at the beginning of June, and I did check in with her last week for a status update. And so it sounds like they're still in process. She did mention that if it didn't work out through the FEMA route, that yes, CARES Act hopefully could pick that up for us. So we're really hopeful.
Okay. Any questions, either Mary or Josh, for Aaron?
Aaron.
So,
go ahead.
So my guess, well, I'm told that Burgess contacted both Josh and Mary yesterday. And so are you hearing anything about the city of Spokane Valley wanting to build a facility on the fairground to increase our revenue? And if you have heard something, what have you heard? If you haven't heard anything, I can share with you the conversation that Burgess had with me, and I understand that Mike said that he talked to both Josh and Mary too, so all three of us have the same information. But have you heard anything, Aaron?
Jerry and I did talk a couple weeks ago, just that they are very interested in still moving forward, and I have been involved in some planning meetings and looking at some initial concept drawings for that.
The last time we left off, they had three concepts, but the preferred one seemed to always be the fairgrounds. It always bubbled up to the fairgrounds. And I think
we like that.
Well, I like it a lot, but you bet. And I think what appeals to some of the folks in the city of the Valley is that the other two alternatives didn't necessarily generate sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we're going to put our money into an investment, I think the logic is why don't we build an asset that serves multi-purpose for the fair, and maybe we get some sales tax out of it too. What could be wrong with this picture? So,
can I ask what exactly is, so Burgess had told me that it's they want to build another expo building.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what's their driving force to, I mean, essentially want to build a building on our property? I mean, I know it's in the valley, but it's like, hey, what are the fun? I mean, because Burgess said they were gonna try to go after a capital budget money to construct it.
Yeah, sales tax revenue generation was the biggest driver.
Okay.
And the opportunity to do something inside the city of Spokane Valley.
Alright.
We've got land, we've got an event center. They're thinking that if they can increase the activity at the fairgrounds, the city of the valley benefits from that as well.
Okay.
And the
All right.
space that they were talking about, Josh, there was two, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. I saw two conceptual drawings of what the structure would be like. It would, number one, it would replace the less than desirable trailer that Aaron and her staff
That's a triple wide. It's amazing.
that they live in, and maybe not the best, welcome to my front door
Mhm.
building. It would also add capacity. And one of the issues that has been in the past apparently was some of the larger cranes and farm equipment that is very difficult to get physically into any of the buildings, where this would accommodate that in that large breezeway section.
It would, and also adding possibly more meeting space that we're really lacking out there, that if you want to get some of these bigger national shows, they need a combination of meeting, seminar space, and exhibit hall. So it would allow us to do that. And it would also provide us more of a dressed up venue for maybe more formal type of functions, dinners, fundraisers, and much better office space. We talked about a possible brewery, restaurant, the stadium district idea.
Yep.
Okay.
Can we see the designs at some point?
Sure.
The three of us?
Sure.
Yeah, I can reach out to John at the Valley and get that together.
Yeah, have them send it in. I
Mhm.
think you've seen it before when one of our meetings out in the valley,
Yeah.
the concepts to it. Yeah, we'll get that to you.
Yeah. So why don't we dial it up for the next meeting, or next week or the week after next?
Sure. Mary?
Barry?
So my understanding is the city council has not approved this.
They have not.
It's just a thought that the city staff has, that to use lodging tax, it would take, it has to go through the lodging tax committee, but that has not occurred yet. So there's a lot of stuff that has not occurred yet. This is a thought process as they're looking at what the capital ask would be. So there's still a lot left unknown. So it's one of those that, and what would be the ask on our part? Would they be wanting us to contribute or not? They haven't said any of that. So there's still a lot left to be discussed on this. This is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination.
So
And we
you're telling us the grand opening hasn't been scheduled yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Or groundbreaking.
yeah, because I think it's just been in these concepts for quite a while, but none of it's been approved and figured out. So, like I said, if when I spoke with Mayor Wick last night, because we were talking about health district stuff, he didn't know that it was actually being put forward yet. So
They also have a concept. Maybe we'll ask John to send the other concepts too, because they had one for Plants Ferry, the improvements at Plants Ferry Park. There was another, I don't know if they had a drawing of this. There was another concept they were kicking around to build some kind of a sports complex out toward Liberty Lake.
Yeah, in conjunction with the new high school.
Yeah, in
right,
conjunction
so
with
the old gun range property.
Yeah.
right. So I think those are the only three that I can recall that they were still kicking around to try to decide which one they were going to pursue.
I think so, but I don't know that there's been any. Staff is making decisions, but I don't think anyone else has made decisions.
So taking the valley out of the equation, is adding a different venue out at the fairgrounds a marketing opportunity, or is that a good investment opportunity for the county to look at?
It is. It's something, our board has talked about for a number of years in our master planning thoughts, just because we are so locked up with when our main expo hall is in use. And sometimes we could just use an extra 20, 30,000 standalone square feet for a separate event to take place.
I think one of the things too, Aaron, that I'm glad you had that list of those events that were canceled, is that the facility itself, and I know the board knows better than this, but I mean, the public, thinks of the fairgrounds as the fair. So you have this 7 or 10 day run every year, and that's about it. There's always something going on in normal times at the fairgrounds, and the facilities aren't. We would even have more opportunities for events if we had the right facilities on site. And that's part of the kind of the long range plan. That should be a sales tax generator every weekend and most weeks if we do this right. So.
Yeah, I mean, people are staying at our area hotels. We know they're going to Costco, Lowe's, TJ Maxx, dining out, buying fuel. So there definitely is a value there, especially to the city of the Valley, but to the region with what we're doing. On any given weekend, we're bringing in 300 vendors for one of our large events. Yes, a number of them are local, but a lot of them are from out of town traveling circuits. So we know we're a draw from far for activities at our facility. So we want to keep building on that.
Okay.
We're going to have a heck of a fair next year, aren't we, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm just praying we get there. I'm hearing, we really won't know what the new norm of large scale events will look like for a couple of years. It's going to take some time to rebuild and implement. Anyway, as we know, we need a vaccine. And I was just reading an article about Fred Hutch, a research, and this talks about how events are unfortunately the super spreaders of COVID-19. So it's really going to be the last thing to come on board. With that said, moving forward and with the direction of Dr. Lutz, and not getting to that phase 4 where we need to be to host events, we are going to have to make some phone calls on October and November events in the near future. I mean, we're in communication with our events all the time, but some of them want us to cancel. They don't want to have to cancel themselves. So we need to come up with some wording and making sure we're all on the same page with our events. It's easy for the events to just put on social media, well, the fairgrounds canceled us because Dr. Lutz, said it's not feasible to host events. And I don't think we're quite ready to create that kind of storm of information out there. And Dr. Lutz is great at making recommendations, but ultimately he doesn't want to be the person to tell me that I need to cancel these things. So we just kind of have to be careful about how we move forward. So we've just kind of been baby stepping everything kind of a month at a time and making those decisions and those cancellations. Because there's some people that they watch a different news channel and they're like, Aaron, we're going to be to phase 4 in no time. I'm like, whoa, what? I'm not getting your channel here, So it's a little bit tricky. But.
Well, part of the new norm is just changing the name of the event from a concert to a protest, and it's fine then.
That's true.
Mary?
Yeah. So Aaron, on the virtual fair, how's that going? And kind of, one of the things that I'm, particularly concerned about for kids is I, keep, going down that path with a lot of different things is, the auction and all of that, so the kids have been, working on these animals.
Yes.
So the junior livestock auction.
Yeah, so we are working closely with our exhibitors, and we are doing some online training with our booster to help the kids go out there and sell their animals on their own. We're also going to be putting up a bulletin board and on social media, and I'm reaching out to local media to help us promote out that, hey, we've got this many kids that have been raising these animals to sell at the fair this year, and we need to help them sell these animals. So we're putting a lot of things in place to help them out with that.
So can you make sure that you let me know about it?
Sure, definitely. And then in regards to the virtual fair, we did come up with like 20 plus different areas people could still enter the fair virtually, like photography, 3D printing projects, kids arts and crafts. We want to see what your gardens look like. We're still doing the giant pumpkin contest. And so we're still going to do some things to engage the community, like to guess the pumpkin's weight, win prizes. And then we're also, you know, like I said, working on our fair food event for 6 dates. We have 15 food vendors, which is pretty impressive for September for those dates. So we're looking forward to that. And we're also working with the Washington State Fairs Association Entertainer membership to do a couple of concerts and different activities online during what would be our traditional 10 days of the fair.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron? Very good. Well,
Aaron, you're doing a fabulous job. These are very trying times, and you know, I just want everybody to remember you're an enterprise fund. You're trying to run a business just like a lot of other folks in the region, and it's hard, especially when you have to let people go. But you hang in there. You're doing good.
I appreciate that. Some weeks are rougher than others, but we're plugging through. So yeah.
All right.
all right.
Great to see everyone.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Okay, so next up on our agenda is Mr. Steve Bartell, going to give us a report, your annual management report.
You're gonna have to
And you need to turn your mic on.
Geez, I pulled a Jerry there.
Oh,
Nice.
very good.
Whoa.
Nice analogy.
Whoa.
Anything technology, throw me under the bus. Thanks.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a nice report, Steve. You're done.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Driscoll have that.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity again this year to present the risk management annual report. I hope you all have a copy of it. I sent it off to Gina when I requested the meeting. But I just want to touch base on a couple issues as I normally do for the annual report. Under page 4 on the executive summary, you'll see that the overall program expense for risk management was down 8% in 2019, which was about $817,000. So that's a good thing, especially when we also had serious increases in our property insurance policy of a little over 80%. Or an additional $215,000. The property insurance market has absolutely gone crazy over the last couple of years, and we had a 2-year locked-in policy through the risk pool, and so we didn't see a 240% increases over the last 2 years. We just got hit with the 80% increase, and it actually caused the pool to actually start a self-insured program in our property program as well, in which the first $100,000 is provided coverage through the pool. Doesn't mean it costs us less. It just means the money that we pay in premium goes somewhat to our reserve for the property side of the house, and of course the rest goes to the premium for the insurance companies. On page 4, you'll also see some accomplishments in 2019. I completed my presidency term with the risk pool. It was probably the hardest term that I've ever had to deal with. It was my second time as presidency, so I had a little bit of experience, but we were having year after year after year of really terrible claims outcomes and a negative development factor, in which was the reason why our liability insurance premiums kept going up and up and up, and why the pool had to completely change their liability program to where, as you know now, we have a $2 million self-incurred retention at the pool level before it even goes off to reinsurance and excess. The biggest change that we did was we really took a hard look at how we were managing and adjusting claims, and did a complete rewrite of the claims policy at the risk pool. That resulted in a claims department mutiny, as I call it, whereas the claims manager and every one of the claims representatives for the pool ended up resigning. And so between the membership and the executive director, we had to stay on top of all those claims, in which we did. It was extremely difficult, but we got through it. And we now have a complete new claims staff, and happy to report for 2 years now, we've had a negative claims development and very favorable for a change renewal rates as far as our liability program goes. We also completed capital modeling studies on both funds 505 and 507, which are workers' comp and liability, kind of get with the new standard of, you know, where do we set our reserves and how do we do our cost allocation, and instead of that confidence level that was used in the past, it's more used kind of like storms, where there's a 1 in a 100-year event, or a 2 events, you know, in a 100-year events, or the bottom and top range for where we believe we should be funded adequately with our reserve and our exposure for liability. And, you know, also happy to say that we've already been there. Our workers' comp side struggles a little bit to get up into that equity range, but I believe we're getting there. Liability program is extremely strong. We implemented a county crane and rigging safety program, which was a huge L&I requirement for 2019, and we were able to do that and get the equipment and get the training done and the certifications done. So all of our public works folks and environmental services folks are 100% compliant. And lastly, we also implemented an electronic prescription program in our workers' comp, which is very cost effective, proven so far to be, and a heck of a lot less time requirements for my two workers' comp adjudicators. As far as goals and objectives for 2020, regardless of what we had listed for goals and objectives, as you well know, they pretty much all changed come about March. But it's interesting to point out that one of our goals was to complete our continuation of operations plan. And whether we wanted to or not, we were kind of like other departments, forced to make sure we got that completed and tried, and continue to operate with alternate work schedules and telecommuting. And it's been very, very successful. You know, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get out of the COOP plan, as most departments haven't fully yet, but we're still operating at 100% capacity and meeting all our requirements and compliance issues. So that's been a huge success. We continue to do our performance monitoring. You know, we were very successful and continue to be successful in our time loss. I believe in 2019, we saved 52% of what we would have paid out in time loss to those folks that were out of work because of work-related injuries, and the Public Works Department, law enforcement deputies, and of course corrections officers. Those were the focus, and that continues to be pretty successful. We continue, as far as the performance management, to look at all of our injuries and trend those, and really focus our loss control efforts on those preventable injuries that we determined after review of all the incident reports month by month. And I think we're making progress there as well. And then of course we continue to look at our claims and our litigation, and you know, really trying to be aggressive on that and trying to get them resolved as quickly and cheaply as possible when we have issues. And but we're still certainly willing to fight the good fight when that need arises. On page 5, the cost of risk is a little different this year. Even though it's the 14th year in a row that we've met or exceeded industry standard of 3%, our cost of risk for 2019 did go up to 2.27, which is probably one of the higher marks that I can remember. But it's not due from our increase in costs. As I told you before, it went down $817,000. But the cost of risk is calculated from total risk management expenses against the total county expenditures for the year. And as you know, county expenditures went down some $90 million because of some reallocation of community service funds. So that had an impact on our cost of risk. So even though it has gone up, it's still below industry standard. And again, whether in the past our cost of risk has maybe been slightly below what it should have been because of our expenditures, I don't know. But the 4-year average is still way down at 2.12. So the 1 year of this 2019 increase still didn't have a huge impact on our overall just over 2% cost of risk, which again, those numbers are used by industry across the country, whether it's private or public. And it just shows that we do have a very good, effective risk management program in place here at the county. Moving on to the workers' comp section, which is page 5. Our worker hours, as you know, we also 911 and some emergency communications went off to their own public utility. So our worker hours did decrease by, well, almost 1 million. Actually not 1 million, I'm sorry, 100,000, from 4.1 to just over 4 million worker hours a year. We had a claims frequency decrease. It pretty much was stayed the same. I mean, 3.5% claims decrease, 154 to 146 is again right there in the ballpark. I wouldn't really make note of that, and it's been the same for the last 3 years. As we get later on in the report, you'll see by the numbers on the graphs. Our severity went up a little bit, about $95,000 or 1%. Our total time loss decreased by 8%, but the thing that got us was partial permanent impairment costs. And what that is, as commissioners, is when somebody gets injured and they go through the claims process and they get treatment, and we get to a point of what's called maximum medical improvement, it still doesn't return them to 100% before the injury happened. So a PPI or partial permanent impairment is the amount of money determined by a legislature that is paid to that individual to cover that gap between where they ended up being fixed and stable and where the 100% mark was. That cost in 2019 increased by 55% of $199,000. And I will tell you that directly relates to 3 injuries that we had, in which all 3 workers were not able to come back to work. And so that partial permanent impairment difference was extremely high. And the cost of settling those claims and letting them, basically all 3 of them were at the age of retirement, but still had to be medically lauder-billed because they just couldn't come back to work. And, you know, there comes a time, even in workers' comp, like liability, in which, you know, you can keep paying time loss, or you can come to a resolution and a settlement and be done, and they sign a agreement, which, you know, they're done, they've taken the money they're going to get, they get a lump sum payment, and then we move on. In the liability section, which is page 6, we did have on the first party, which is our property claims, or, you know, we self-insure all of our auto vehicles, and and personal property and those type of things. And we did have about a 13% increase in the number of claims. And again, that is pretty standard, though. It bounces back and forth, somewhere between 195 to this 225 claims. Most of them are on the small side. But the severity in the first party claims in 2019 increased by 36%, which equated to about $450,000. What we did have in 2019 is a lot of law enforcement vehicles that were total loss in accidents. And a lot of those accidents we weren't able to recover from an at fault because either they didn't have insurance or a license, or it was a stolen car, or our deputies just crashed as a result of their own accord. These Explorers are a bit more expensive. The Crown Vics used to be a $25,000, $30,000 vehicle. The Explorers are more like $50,000 to $55,000 a piece, and when we have a total loss, that can ramp up pretty quickly. I did bring that to the attention of the sheriff, where $199,000 were just in vehicle total losses from 2019, and I believe he was going to address his troops about vehicle use, and but I haven't been successful in getting their deputies to complete the defensive driving training, which quite honestly applies to 90% of the time that his law enforcement deputies are driving. I'll continue to work on that. Page 6, the loss control activities. This is the chance for us to brag a little bit. In 2019, we were able to complete 129 training classes for employees. We completed 104 hazard assessments. We completed 57 liability investigations, which are the on-call after hours when things happened and property's damaged and serious crashes on our roadway. We go out and take a look at that and make sure we get a good snapshot of whether we have any liability exposure. We do have over 700 employees in our hearing conservation program, and we met 100% compliance with that program in 2019. We're going to struggle with that 2020, obviously. And we were also 100% compliant with all of our drug and alcohol testing, whether it's the CDLs or whether it was reasonable suspicion or drug-free workplace policy. Campus security continues to evolve. On page 7, you'll see that Ray was able to complete 7 risk vulnerability assessments to a variety of different county facilities. And we also had a big movement, and we worked with the court deputy, the court security deputy, on working with all the courts, the chambers, the jury areas, the courtrooms with an emphasis on the active shooter and the setting up safe rooms and their emergency plans, so that all of our courts now have that in place. And then we implemented that security access and crisis advisory team policy that you adopted in 2019. On page 8, our risk transfer costs. Those are all the expenses that we have, and you can see the big blue area there represents that liability. I do have to fix the number there on the risk cost. I guess I fat fingered the 60, so I'll have to go and replace that before I post that on the site. But our risk transfer costs increased by 11%, and again, primarily that was due to that property insurance going up 80%. But everything else pretty much stayed the same. You'll see that most of the cost increases were below industry standard, which is 5%, is what we can expect to see as far as increases on insurance policies year in and year out. When we go to the loss statistics on pages 9 through 12, we just go through one at a time. I've done this a little differently last year and this year. just because the each department and each number and so on and so forth really didn't show a nice picture overview. But and I will make a remark that in that total number of claims, I have to do something different than the blue too, because it certainly doesn't show up too well in print as far as being able to see it. But on the total number of claims, you'll see that, they're plus or minus. I mean, we've gone from, 288 on first party to 196 to 225. So again, the average there, we'll go down here. The average is about 220. So, we bounce back and forth to that. Again, the volatility isn't really too bad. Our new liability, or our new claims adjuster, Josh Tishmer, has really done a great job and really been responsive as far as getting out actually in the field, checking with the variety of different repair shops, questioning the repairs and so on and so forth. And even though I think the program has improved drastically, unfortunately, as we continue to have losses, and they're costly losses, it hasn't reflected that yet. But I would hate to see what it would be like if Mr. Tishmer weren't out in the field really digging in deep to all the repair facilities and so on and so forth. We also had a couple of losses that weren't covered under our property insurance we were able to help the department and get them back on speed, especially water damages. As you remember, over in the jail, we had a couple of those again from flooded toilets and such, and that just wreaks havoc. Workers' comp pretty much stayed stable. Third-party liability increased a bit, but again, overall the cost associated, we had more claims, but a lot of them were denied claims. And then you can see as far as the frequency for workers' comp, which is the number of claims, and the severity really didn't change a whole lot. It pretty much stayed the same. Again, our big hit on workers' comp, as I'll repeat, were those partial permanent impairments. Hopefully we're past those, and we're already seeing a better year in 2020 as far as our expenses and our number of claims coming in. We haven't seen those increases. Likewise, in our third-party liability, we haven't seen the lawsuits and the claims come in, with the exception of some grumbling now of a couple of claims that have started to come in on the jail deaths that we experienced in 2018. So that's pretty much my report. I will mention too, on the bottom, you'll see that large spike in public works on the third-party severity. That almost entirely represents two claims. Our worst one, which was the Tapkin claim, which was the gal that was injured on the motorcycle down on the Spangle-Waverly curve, in which the judgment against the county was 9.2 million, I believe it was. We're well above our deductible. We were before we even went to trial, but it's still, I wanted to represent that that's the kind of money that was paid out, whether it was by our pockets or whether our risk pool coverage. The other one that kind of falls in there is the Evans. We were successful of that, and we did get a defense verdict in trial, but it still cost around $700,000 to defend that case, just because of the experts and the 2-week trial and the appeals and the continuing litigation. But that's my annual report for 2019.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve? Jerry.
Steve, do you anticipate the claims going up, down, or about the same if we have this extended working from home telecommuting that goes on for the next 6 months or so? Do you anticipate the claims going up, down, or about the same?
I think overall, whether it's injury claims or first party, I think first party claims are going to stay about the same. I mean, our law enforcement guys in public works are still out there doing what they have to do. providing those services. We have seen a reduction in workers' comp so far this year, and we've seen a huge reduction in third-party liability. But again, when the courts are closed, right, and they're not able to file the litigation, I do believe that moving forward, and again, it's not going to hit us all at once, but we are going to see some of those jail death claims from the 2018 timeframe start coming in with the grumblings. We've already seen some of the public records requests, and we've seen, again, a couple of the claims come in. We have, one claim still from 2012, a jail death claim that continues to just go in a very, very slow motion forward. Even though the trial is supposed to be January of next year, every effort we have made to try and negotiate or talk to the plaintiffs has not been successful, and they're still stuck at their $10 million demand. So it makes a pretty easy decision for us to move forward with the trial.
Okay, thank you.
So Steve, a general question for you. So if we've got an employee that's working at home and, let's say they're working at their dining room table and they're walking to the table, they slip and fall, is that work related or is that a personal injury that's on their homeowners?
Now that if they're on the clock, most likely it's going to be a workers' compensation. We did have one employee, believe it or not, that got up from their desk and tripped over their dog and broke their ankle, and we sent to L&I for a coverage determination, and they came back and said, nope, it's covered. Now again, it doesn't mean we can't, either discipline or give better direction or guidance as far as limitations and restrictions for folks that are telecommuting. But as far as workers' comp goes, it's strict liability. So if they're on the clock and that's their work area, and again, that's, unfortunately, that's the way it goes, but it protects us also from third-party liability, and the costs and the prices are set by legislature. So, doctors have to take less money for treatment and so on and so forth. We've tried to increase the amount of tools that we can provide to our telecommuting force as far as, home safety checklists. And if somebody has a question about their setup, my staff is certainly more than willing to go out and take a look and make recommendations. And quite honestly, advise them if they don't have a safe environment to work from home, we're gonna take that back to the department head as well.
Okay. Any other questions, Mary or Josh?
Yeah. So along those lines, is there some way to do some kind of release that if they trip over their dog, that's on them, because we haven't had anybody sign anything that I know of, that by you choosing, because at some point it's a choice to be working from home when we have the ability to bring people back. And so if they're going to choose to work from home, they have to accept some of that risk liability. And so is there some kind of form release that we can have them sign for that?
Commissioner, we did revise that telecommuting agreement for the COVID-19, and there is a place where the employee signs on that form that they agree to the safe work environment and so on and so forth. I do believe moving forward that we can again revise that to call out some other issues that are restrictions. Your animal can't be in your workspace when you're doing county work, or that's just one example, but there's a lot of other things that people kind of either are naive or take for granted because they're working from home. They think they can just throw everything out on the dining room table and sit on a heightened stool that's not very ergonomically correct, or whatever it is. But I think we can come up with a better set of standard home office type requirements that the employee has to sign. As far as workers' comp though, we've fought and fought and fought with workers' comp for years, and you know, they have their own mindset about the strict liability thing, and they're pretty much going to provide that coverage. Doesn't mean we can't say, you know what, it's too big of a risk for you to work from home anymore. You're going to have to come back and work in an office. But I don't know if we're at that point yet. That's going to be a hard one.
So if you saw my setup here, you would be saying it's not appropriate since I'm at the kitchen bar counter on a bar stool. And
Commissioner, I love the natural light.
and the dogs, I'm leaving the screen so I can let them know. So, wow, okay. Because I've got my husband is in the office, so you gotta separate who's in which room at this point in time. But okay, thank you.
So in the situation where the employee tripped over the dog, can we file a claim against the dog owner?
You'll have to ask Mr. Kaufman there. I don't know. Possibly.
I'm just thinking. All right, very good. Well, thanks, Steve.
Of course, the homeowner's policy probably doesn't know that they're using their residence as a place of business. And they probably would need a business rider for that. Kind of like your vehicle, your privately owned vehicle. And if you don't let your insurance company know that you're using your vehicle for business purposes, you could have some issues with your coverage.
Well, and that gets to a part of a conversation we were having yesterday with regard to if we do go to a program where we have people work at home, that if we adopt a policy saying you will work at home, then they can take a home office deduction off their tax return for being able to have an office space at home. But then that does raise the issue with regard to insurance and your homeowners that you do have to have a rider.
It does, and you know, homeowners policies like auto insurance policies are all over the board on that. You know,
Yeah.
they have different definitions for de minimis use and, you know, part-time use and all those type of things. But there's some companies that say no, zero, absolutely not, unless you want to pay extra money.
It'd be something we need to consider in some kind of policy if we do develop and move forward after COVID. We should probably take those into consideration.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a condition of working at home, that you have to carry that policy. Rider. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Step one.
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry, Jim.
Thanks. Steve, you had said the property insurance premiums were up 80% in 2 years. Is that what I understood correctly?
We had it went up 80% in 2019 prior to the renewal, which was October 1 of 2019. The pool had a 2-year previous policy for a 2-year span. So it was locked in for the same premium for 2017 and 2018. So we took a huge hit in 2019.
So about 40% average per year then?
Yeah. You know, so far the indicators that we got from the insurance company at our annual Zoom meeting was we're going to see about an 8% increase in property in 2020, which is below what the rest of the market is. So we've done extremely well with our property program across all the pool counties. And actually our liability were less than 5% increase for 2020, which is outstanding.
Those 2 years then were kind of an aberration?
Yeah, you remember what happened in 2018 was just a terrible year with the hurricanes and all the fires. I mean, it's a global market now. It's not just, you know, regional. They take all the exposures and they model them and they spread that risk worldwide. It's global. So, you know, even the small little, you know, out of the way country bumpkin townships are getting hit with big property insurance raises.
We're not going to make sure you had to switch everything over to them.
All right, Steve, thank you for all the good news.
Okay, have a great day.
All righty, take care.
Bye.
Mr. Maceo.
Thank you, Chairman French. I'll move down here if I could.
Belly up to the bar.
Thank you, Mr. Gimmel. If I could have you pass these out just to be sure.
Here we go. You got one?
Board members,
That's it.
yes. Board members, we have on the screen a summary sheet. The purpose of this meeting is to get authorization from the Board of County Commissioners to place on tomorrow's this afternoon's consent agenda, execution of the purchase and sale agreement for 55 West Mission Avenue. I provided the board with a summary sheet, and the summary sheet articulates the facts giving rise to this. A couple of issues I want to be sure the board is aware of. Number one, the city of Spokane and Spokane Housing Authority had already negotiated a purchase and sale agreement for the property. The purchase and sale agreement had been signed by the Spokane Housing Authority, but it had not yet been signed by the city. When the county commissioners decided that they would purchase the property with CARES Act money, instead of renegotiating the agreement, I took the agreement which had been negotiated between the Spokane Housing Authority as the owner and the city of Spokane, and I modified it to be applicable to Spokane County. There are two issues in the document which I modified, which I want to be sure the board is aware of. The first issue has to do with how you establish the compensation that we will pay, or the purpose price. On page 2 of the memo, Ron, if I could have you go to that, you'll see the language on the top that addresses how we establish the purchase price. The city of Spokane had language in there that basically said the housing authority and the city would each hire a commercial appraiser, and then they would come up with their values. They would be averaged, and then that would be the purchase price. I felt that we needed a little bit more flexibility, so I modified the language to provide that after each, the county and the Spokane Housing Authority have their certified commercial appraisers come up with amount of money. If it's greater than 10% differential between the two of them, we hire someone to look over those appraisals, and then that person's decision will be binding on the parties. This is language which we have used previously, and I thought it put us in a better position. That language has been approved by the Housing Authority. I want to add one caveat here. I asked the Housing Authority if they had a particular number that they were looking at that they would like to sell the property for. And I thought potentially I could sit down with the board and we could negotiate from that number. And what they advised me through their attorney was they'd rather use the process that's in the purchase and sale agreement to arrive at the price of the property. The assessor's office has evaluated the property at $1,195,000. So they've agreed to the language on page 2 with regard to the purchase price and how you establish it. There is a loggerhead right now, Board of County Commissioners, with regard to the language on page 1. Ron, if I could have you scroll back to that. And I want to apologize a little bit. I've made just a little change in what you see on page 1, which is the funding contingency. Ron, if I could have you go to that, please. Board members, I was a little bit concerned about funding this project from CARES funding. Carrie's here, and I'd like her to address this because the CARES funding, as we know, we've got several things that we're presently using to determine if we can use CARES funding for our project. And they are, number 1, the CARES Funding Act itself, which is section 601D of the Social Security Act, which has the 3 criteria, which the board knows off the top of their head. The second thing is the Department of Treasury has issued guidelines, if you will, to further assist us in determining if we can use CARES funding for a particular project. And then the third thing which we have are frequently asked questions which have been issued by the Department of Treasury. Unfortunately, none of them really address the acquisition of real property. And so because of that, board members, the city of Spokane, when they negotiated their purchase and sale agreement, had a funding contingency in there. I have fine-tuned the funding contingency consistent with what I just handed out to the board and what Ron is showing on the screen. And basically what I've said in a nice way is the county commissioners intend to use CARES money to purchase this property. I've reiterated what the CARES money can be used to fund. And I said the county is presently exploring, if you will, the Treasury guidelines and the frequently asked questions to ensure that the CARES resources can be used to purchase this property. We hope to have this done by October 30th. And if for some reason the CARES money can't be used, the board could back out, if you will, from the acquisition. I don't think the Spokane Housing Authority is yet in agreement with that unique language. And what they asked me this morning through their attorney board members is to ask you to not sign this until next week so they can further look at this contingency language that I have in the document I've handed out. Now, there's two options for the board. Number one, you could say, Mr. Maceo, we're not going to necessarily purchase this from CARES money. You've put that in there. We may use other money. So eliminate that language, Mr. Maceo, and we'll just come up with the money from whatever source we want. It could be general fund. It could be potentially REIT money. It could be something else. And it could be CARES money too. So I would take that out of the purchase and sale agreement. So all we'd have then would be setting the purchase price, board members. And then, of course, we have our 60-day time frame for due diligence. And we can back out if during that time frame there's something else we don't like about the property. There are some unique things that I'm going to draw to the board's attention when we get there, like the roof hangs over the city's right-of-way, like the parking lot drains into a drainage swale, which is on city property, which we're going to have the city reassign to us, and there's indemnity language and there's insurance language in there that are not acceptable to legal counsel. But we can address those issues later on. But the reason I'm here today is if you want to leave in the funding contingency language that I've outlined, then we've got a request from the Spokane Housing Authority that we not take action on this item until next Tuesday because they'd like to look at it in a little bit more detail. If the board wants to take that language out, I can take it out of the purchase and sale agreement. I'm sure the Spokane Housing Authority will be happy if I did that, and then we could sign the purchase and sale agreement this afternoon and send it to Spokane Housing Authority to sign. Let me say one other thing. Carrie's here, and Carrie and Jim Kaufman and Chris Anderson and Jessica Pilgrim and I have been looking at this whole CARES Acting funding. And we believe we have a strong case to use CARES money for the acquisition of 55 West Mission property because it's presently being leased to the Salvation Army as a homeless shelter, which has distancing required under COVID-19 requirements. And we intend, board members, to recommend to the board that that lease arrangement, once we purchase the property, is extended for probably another 6 months. So we believe that the purchase of the property to provide for a homeless shelter for COVID-19 distancing clearly falls within the CARES Act. What we're concerned about, board members, is are we going to have some sort of finding that only a certain proportion and amount of the CARES money can be used for that? Because after, if you will, you no longer use it for homeless sheltering, for distancing, there might be some issue. So we're trying to fine tune this, and Carrie is in the process right now of working, as is Commissioner CUNY, to fine tune that a little bit. So Commissioner French and board members, the question is, we've got a request to continue this for 1 week because the Spokane Housing Authority wants to look at the contingency funding language, or do you want me to take it out so that you have the flexibility to purchase the property from any funding source, and we wouldn't have the funding contingency dealing with the CARES Act funding?
Comments, Mary or Josh?
Yeah, so Carrie, you're in the room, right?
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
I'm back here in the corner.
I can't see you.
Here, let me move
So-
up.
So yeah, so I've had conversations with Chris, I've had conversations with Carrie, I've had conversations with John Colton, with Patty Murray's office, and so we're trying to figure this out. You know, Chris definitely had some different ideas on, you know, that this money was directly from the feds, not from the state, so why would the state auditors have anything to do with it? I had to explain to him that the state auditors have everything to do with it because of the Single Audit Act of 1983 or 7, that we become the agent of on behalf of the feds to do the audit. So it is the state auditor's office, of which I used to be one, that will be doing the audit to look at this. So, so we're in contact with John Colton, trying to get to someone at Treasury that we can just get the clarity that we need. So that way we have the information, because remember when the state auditor's office came in and I asked the question during our entrance conference that if we had an email or documentation from the feds, they would accept that. I know Carrie's also put some information forward to the state auditors through the help desk that we're waiting on. So I guess I would say I'd be happy to wait a week so we can try to get clarity, because I think we can get further clarity within the week. And I just want to make sure that we're doing it right and not getting crosswise with the feds, because I think, Carrie, you can correct me if, you know, it's one thing on the performance of it and all of that we got some clarity, but it's if we're actually physically purchasing real property, which we are, that there's some section that talks about getting prior approval to do that. And so we are working through that, like I said, with John Colton's office, with Patty Murray, that even if we need to talk to Patty Murray herself and see if she says okay, then I think that would be fine for the state auditor's office to agree to. And that's what we're looking into.
So Commissioner, if I can address that, we sent yesterday both to the state auditor's office help desk the question on whether we had to have pre-approval on this and a couple other issues. And then I participated in the GFOA conference call yesterday at noon as well. And Friday afternoon, I received a Survey Monkey from U.S. Treasury to ask us 2 simple questions, and it went out to all prime recipients of this money, whether we had purchased real property with CARES dollars or did we intend to do so. So it looks like this question is being asked in more than one location at this point. GFOA took my questions and they're submitting it to the Office of Inspector General as well, because it's really nebulous out there. There's no clear answer. They couldn't answer me. The state auditors haven't been able to answer. I think that the purchase of this property quite clearly falls under what the CARES money was to be used for. It's just, what do we have to have put in place, and what happens after we purchase this if this property switches over to another use in, say, like June? What happens? And the guidance is pretty clear that we would have to, you know, reach out to them if that is the case. So we're just trying to get some clarity on that at this point. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. And I appreciate the effort and the work that you've put into it, because again, I just don't want to get stuck with an audit finding. And as I explained to Chris Anderson, that he's like, well, they're not going to make you pay the money back. It's like, yes, you know, state auditor's office, that if they do a finding and it's a question cause, we do have to pay the money back. So I don't want to get into that situation. I just want to make sure that we're all clear as to how we're doing this. And it shouldn't take that long, I don't think. So it's just, you know, making sure, based on last week, I've tried to be on top of this with Carrie and with John Colton to make sure that we're getting clear answers.
Commissioner French, Commissioner CUNY, 1 week won't make any difference in the county if we sign the document, completing our due diligence, Mary, and acquiring it by the end of the year, so we can trip, if you will, this the homeless lease that's on the property. But I know I'll be coming back to the board members with some issues that Deborah and I have noticed when we got the preliminary title report. Board members were kind of moving forward. So once the board signs the PNS, we can move forward pretty rapidly, but there are some issues that have come up, and we're going to be needing the board's direction on those, but I'll wait until we sign the P&S, Commissioner French.
Have you discussed the encroachments with the city of Spokane, and are they willing to grant us an easement for the encroachments?
We have not discussed any of that with the city yet. I was waiting for a direction, frankly, from the Board of County Commissioners. I can tell you that the easements, when they were reviewed by a city consultant, he did not think they were an issue. That is the overhang on the right of way. The issue with respect to the parking lot and the drainage going into a swale, which is subject to a lease, a permit agreement with the city, no one is really caught until Deborah and I looked it over and we caught that issue. And I think what the risk manager is suggesting to the county is we would like the city to vacate that right of way so it runs with the property. Therefore, our responsibility to maintain the drainage swale, board members, will be in our insurance. But again, Commissioner French, we haven't yet communicated that to the city, and I don't know that I want to until without the permission of the present owner. I don't want to raise problems with the property, and unless you would like me to.
Well, I'd hate to have the city or the city bow its back and then have the county in a position to where we're incurring additional costs we didn't have to. And then the other part of it is, do you think that there might be an argument for the feds to come back and say, why did you spend $1.3 million to get a piece of property that if you just continued to pay the rent, you could have acquired the use for $60,000?
Well, you ask a good question. I think that's what Commissioner Cuney and Kerry are trying to find out with their conversations with Senator Murray's office and Mr. Colton, because, and the monkey tree question that Kerry responded to. So Commissioner French, this issue is one which I think a lot of people are asking. You're right. The question is, why don't we just pay the rent of $12,250 a month for this, if you will, 7 or 8 month time frame instead of buying the building? That's the inquiry you've asked. And so we're just trying to dot the I's and cross the T's as Commissioner Cuney is doing, and she is exploring with Senator Murray's office this issue, and hopefully Kerry can pin it down with her conversations.
Okay. Anything else anybody else wants to weigh in with? Anybody? Okay. So for this afternoon's agenda, then, we will defer action on this for 1 week.
Commissioner French, it was going to be a by leave item, so you don't need to do anything.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything. All right, never mind. Okay. Somebody going to say something? All right.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman French.
All right, very good. Thank you. Then, moving on. CARES funding, we're on a roll.
Actually, Pat Farrell, I think, is going to do a presentation for the board this morning.
Okay, we've got a memo from Pat, so you're on.
Good morning, board. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So this request is to upgrade the licensing on our Avaya phone system so that we can enable our teleworkers to make and receive calls on their 477 prefix numbers as if they were at work. They can use a soft phone or a headset on their computer instead of currently they use their personal cell phone or county cell phone. This when they call out on their personal cell phone, they're presenting their personal, phone number to customers that they're calling, and this has presented some problems. We've rolled this feature out to a few people in departments like the assessor's office, and they've been real happy with it. We have other customers who would like to take advantage of this feature, but because they're on, we have a mix of licensing on our phone system, old licensing, new licensing. And if the folks are on the old licensing, it doesn't support the this remote calling feature. So this request is to upgrade the phone system so that we can fully support anybody, any department. If they have teleworkers at home, we can move their phones so they can make and receive calls on those 477 prefix numbers. And I think this request falls under the Allowable CARES Act spending guidelines, as it provides investments in teleworking to allow public employees to work from home.
Okay, any questions for Pat? So this is a request for CARES funding, so I need a motion.
Commissioners, can I interject? I think we had talked, if I'm not mistaken, to change the amount to up to 110. So we would cover that because it's 100 and I think
It's 107,612 now.
So if we
Pat,
kept it up.
Was it 115, Pat, with tax?
108 with tax, John.
So up to
Rounded up to
110.
110.
So
Yeah.
up to one.
Not to exceed.
Okay. So motion for 110.
Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize the expenditures of up to $110,000 of CARES money for the Avaya telephone system request presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Okay, so next request, Chaz.
Commissioners will recall, I think it was sometime around the 1st of July, Lance Lanier and other CHAZ members came and asked for funding, CARES funding, to cover staff costs and equipment that were incurred by CHAZ during the operation of the isolation facility out at the fairgrounds from the period of time of May 9th or April 9th to May 31st. And their request was for $443,603. It sets forth in here the budget on these 2 pages. This was previously presented. One of the questions that arose is as to whether the CARES money could be used for staff costs, because is it currently in their budget? Can you use it for that? I ran that question up to the U.S. Treasury Department, and Treasury did give us permission and did agree that you could use funding, CARES funding, to cover staff payroll costs that were in budgets for public health workers such as these or medical workers, is because they saw that addressing the COVID situation was substantially different than their prior funded service activities. So the commissioners asked me to reach out to Treasury to find out whether we could use funding to support these types of services, and Treasury did come back with a response that yes, that this is proper. So I'm coming back to you with that information and asking how you would like to proceed with CHAZ's request for that $443,603, which includes both PPE, isolation facility costs that when they ran the facility out there, some subscription costs that FEMA obviously wouldn't cover because they won't cover any kind of computer equipment. There were some isolation tents and some other equipment, and their CHAZ's position is that they were using this equipment to assist us in the isolation facility that was being run out at the fairgrounds.
But we have exhausted what we can out of FEMA money.
Yeah,
with
really.
regard to this.
On this, the question becomes on this, I still haven't got a response from FEMA about whether I can even run it through there, but I would still have to have a contract with CHAZ for these services and then possibly bill them to FEMA as well. So, but that's how we'd have to work this out. There would have to be a contract with CHAZ in place. They would have to bill me. Then I would submit on behalf of reimbursement of whatever the county incurred.
Okay. Any questions, Josh or Mary?
Yes. So, Carrie, I want to make sure before we do any of this, I'd want to talk to Amelia, make sure that none of this was paid for out of the health district already to them. And my thought, I'm not seeing the whole document, but when we saw this before, I mean, some of it was for, HEPA filters at their location. So is all of this just for the isolation center the testing facility at the fairgrounds?
Yes, the breakdown was for that period of time for all the staff that were involved from, I think it is from April 9th to May 31st for the month and a half. This was just CHAZ staff that were involved out there. And it covered, also some of the medical director time, that staffing time. So it covered not just that, but the ancillary services as well that were assisting with staff out there.
Okay, so like I said, I guess before I'd approve this, I'd want to make sure that I'd want to talk with Amelia at the health district just to ensure that there wasn't any duplication of services, because I know they've taken care of some of, I'm not sure that they took care of this. I'm saying, I just want to ensure that they haven't.
So do you want to make that a condition of any kind of proposed motion then?
Or I guess I would just, delay this until Monday, and then we make the motion on Monday. And that way we can ensure, because I can't see the whole thing. I don't have it printed in front of me. So is it more than one page? Yeah,
it's just a one-page summary.
It's actually, it's two pages.
Oh, that there, yeah.
Right, with the budget on the very end of the last page, Commissioner. So if you get down there, then it talks about the non-reimbursed COVID-related costs. So the isolation facility for the actual personnel, and the IT, telehealth, and PPE costs to run that facility were $109. The memorial fees are actually like a telemedicine subscription that allowed them to use a telemedicine software to pre-screen COVID patients. So, and they have all these costs fairly, if you go back up to all these pages, how they were related. What they are asking is in each paragraph that's related to the costs about what made up the cost. So the remote monitoring is the last one. So it talks about the blood pressure cuffs. It talks about the isolation tests. All the costs, honestly, are COVID related and can be reimbursed.
okay. So I guess, we could approve it, contingent upon ensuring that none of these costs were covered by the health district. I'd be fine with that then.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, I as stated previously when Chaz made the presentation, I'm gonna abstain from this just so there's no view of a conflict of interest. I have a family member who's employed by Chaz, so I'm gonna sit this one out.
Okay. So, and Mary, you want to defer it to Monday?
Yeah, let's just defer to Monday, and then we'll know for sure. I'm assuming this probably got sent to us, but I haven't seen it yet. So yes, I would prefer to do it to Monday, just to ensure that there's no duplication that's gone on with the health district.
Okay, so if we can dial this up for Monday, we'll reconsider it then. Okay, any other questions for Carrie? Very good. So that then gets us to Miss Jessica Pilgrim.
And I'm trying to access the Zoom link that I'm not finding right now on my phone. Sorry.
And Jessica, I just sent it to you via email again.
Okay, did you? I was looking for where is it? Okay.
I just checked in with the board. Did you receive a copy of a request for CARES dollars from Whitworth and Gonzaga University?
Jessica or Carrie?
Well, I would just have Carrie here because it was asking for CARES dollars. So if you've received that and get a chance to look it over and stuff, then let me know which direction that you'd like me to take, and I will contact those universities back. Thanks.
Okay. All right, there you are, Jessica.
Hello.
Welcome. So is this executive session? Jessica? Are you there? Hello.
We can see you.
She's probably connected.
Here she is, I bet.
Can you hear us, Jessica?
Sometimes it takes a minute. It still says connecting to audio. Oh,
Now we're not connected at all.
she's gone.
Such a young age, she's gone.
There
Okay.
she is.
While she's connecting, can I get your autograph on a couple of
Sure.
documents that are they need, please?
We see you, Jessica. We just can't hear you.
Don't want to move into executive session until we make sure that we've got a connection.
Absolutely.
Well, while we're waiting for Jessica to connect, do you have, either one of you have any miscellaneous items you want to bring up for discussion?
Nope.
I don't.
Nope. Any special invites, any celebrations, anything? I just trying to kill time until Jessica's around.
Is she just right across the street?
That's what I'm gonna try to see if she wants to
Yeah.
come over.
Okay.
Want me to just ask her to come over?
Yeah, that might be easier. Just open
We
the
can-
window and yell at us.
We can socially distance.
Yeah.
It's about, but I don't know the specifics, so.
I'll just call you on this phone. Thank you. Bye. I'm just gonna call her on this phone.
Okay.
Disconnect that phone, but do we need Chris?
We're going to go into executive session anyway. So who else is going to be on the line? Chris Anderson?
Chris, I guess, are you needed for this pending potential litigation?
I don't believe so.
Didn't think so, yeah.
Yeah, so if it's just Jessica, why don't we,
Let me make this connect.
Chris, enjoy the rest of your morning.
Sounds good.
So,
That way I can just disconnect that phone line,
Something
because
just
I already
check, remember?
disconnected everybody else.
Sit on your side.
I'm telling you.
This is Richard Matheson with the Spokane County Public Defender Office. This is Jessica.
Okay.
all right, so we are going to move into an executive session for approximately, 15 minutes?
Probably only like 10, but yeah.
Okay, 10 minutes. It's now 11:30. It's 11:29. It'll be 11:30 by the time we clear the room. And those in the room will be our three commissioners, the executive management team, and Jessica Pilgrim. And the topic will be pending or potential litigation. When we're done with the executive session, we will adjourn until 2 o'clock. So with that, go ahead.